Last Tuesday my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The 6 numbers on my lottery ticket matched perfectly. $47 million. But here's the twist. I decided not to tell a single soul. Not my parents. Not my siblings. Not even my best friend. Why? Because I already knew what money did to my family, and I was about to test just how far their loyalty really went. The moment those numbers blinked back at me, my life split in two. There was the version of me who walked into the corner store, bought a cheap ticket out of boredom, and never expected anything. And then there was the version staring at my phone, breath shallow, realizing I had just become a multimillionaire. $47 million. My mind kept circling the number like a vulture. It was enough to erase debts, buy houses, travel the world. Enough to secure my future 100 times over. Enough to finally live without fear. But instead of screaming in joy or running out to celebrate, I sank onto my couch in silence. My chest felt heavy, because deep down I knew something that most people wouldn't understand. Money didn't solve problems in my family. Money created them. I had seen it before. The bitter arguments over inheritances, the way small amounts turned siblings against each other, the way my mother would guilt-trip us for loans she never paid back. Money was gasoline, and my family was already a lit match. So in that moment I made the most dangerous decision of my life. Told no one. The next morning, I slipped into work as if nothing had happened. My co-workers chatted about deadlines and cafeteria gossip, and I nodded along, hiding a secret so massive it made me dizzy. Every time my phone buzzed, I thought someone had found out. Every time someone looked at me too long, I wondered if they could see it in my eyes. But no one knew, and that was both comforting and terrifying. I didn't even quit my job. Not yet. That would raise questions. Instead, I kept showing up, shuffling papers, making coffee, pretending. At night, though, when I was alone, my thoughts spiraled. I imagined the moment I told my family, the shock, the excitement, the inevitable demands. I imagined my sister Sophia's voice, sharp and commanding, insisting she deserved a share. I imagined Damien, her husband, finding new ways to manipulate me. And worst of all, I imagined my mother, sweet at first, but twisting the knife with guilt until I gave in. Well, I couldn't let them know. But hiding something this big isn't easy. The secret started bleeding into my behavior. I was more guarded, more hesitant. I pulled away from conversations, dodged family dinners, found excuses not to visit. That's when Sophia called. "Hey," she said casually, but I knew that tone. With Sophia, casual always meant calculated. "Hi," I replied, forcing my voice to stay light. "Damien and I were thinking," she began. "There's this mortgage opportunity. It's a big deal for us, and we need someone reliable to co-sign. Just temporary, of course. You're the responsible one. You'll barely notice." My stomach tightened. Course. It always started this way, small, innocent-sounding requests, but behind her polished words, I could already hear the trap closing. "I'll think about it," I said carefully. There was a pause, just long enough for me to imagine her frown. "Ellie," she pressed, her voice firmer. "This is important. Don't leave us hanging." I ended the call with a knot in my throat. She had no idea I could buy her the house outright with a single check. But if I did, it would never end. One request would turn into another, and another, until my fortune was no longer mine. Still, the guilt gnawed at me. I had always admired Sophia. Growing up, she was the confident one, the leader, the sister who protected me. Refusing her felt like betrayal. But I also knew this. If I gave in now, I'd lose everything. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation, the way her voice sharpened when I hesitated. I thought of Damien, smug and opportunistic, whispering in her ear about how much they deserved. And then, just as I began to drift off, my phone buzzed again. A message from my mother. "Honey, we need to talk. It's important." My chest clenched. I already knew what that meant. The secret was beginning to crack. The next morning I stared at my phone, rereading my mother's message. "Honey, we need to talk. It's important." Normally, her texts were light-hearted, chain messages, Bible verses, reminders about family dinners. But whenever she said, "It's important," it usually meant money. My pulse quickened. Did she know? Had someone slipped up? I shook the thought away. How could she? The lottery office hadn't even processed my winnings yet. No one in the world knew except me. Still, paranoia gnawed at my stomach. I called her back. "Mom," I tried to sound casual. "Sweetheart," she said, relief flooding her voice. I'm glad you called. I didn't want to text all this. She hesitated, as if rehearsing her lines. Your Uncle Ray's medical bills have been piling up. The family's trying to chip in, but it's just not enough. I know you're responsible. You've always been so dependable. Could you help? There it was. The familiar tug. I pressed my lips together. Uncle Ray. The man hadn't spoken to me in years unless he needed something. And now, suddenly I was the savior again. Mom, I said slowly. I'll see what I can do. Her tone brightened instantly. I knew I could count on you. But as I hung up, anger burned in my chest. It was always the same. I was the reliable one, the one expected to patch every hole, to carry every burden. And now, with $47 million in my pocket, the temptation to just give in was stronger than ever. One check, and all their problems would vanish. But so would my freedom. Later that evening, Sophia dropped by unannounced. The knock at the door jolted me. I froze, debating whether to answer. But she knocked again, harder this time. Ellie, I know you're in there. I inhaled sharply and opened the door. She stood there, perfectly polished as always, her hair sleek, her clothes expensive looking though I knew she couldn't afford them. Damien lingered behind her, arms crossed, a faint smirk on his lips. Hi, I said, forcing a smile. Can we come in? She asked. It wasn't really a question. They swept past me into the living room. Sophia got straight to the point. We need an answer about the mortgage. My heart pounded. I told you I'd think about it. You've had enough time. Her tone was sharp now, commanding. Damien chimed in, his voice oily. It's just paperwork, Ellie. No risk. You won't even notice, but it would mean the world to us. I clenched my fists behind my back. If only they knew. If only they realized I could buy the entire neighborhood in cash. But instead they saw me as their safety net, their golden ticket, and they didn't even know how right they were. I can't, I said finally. My voice shook, but I stood my ground. Sophia's eyes narrowed. Can't or won't. Both. The silence that followed was suffocating. Damien leaned forward, his smirk gone. You think you're better than us, don't you? Always have. Flinched. Sophia placed a hand on his arm but didn't look away from me. Her eyes, once full of sisterly warmth, now glimmered with cold disappointment. After everything we've done for you, she said softly, dangerously, you can't even help us with this one thing? I wanted to scream. Everything you've done for me. Growing up, I had been the one cleaning up after her mistakes, the one covering her lies, the one holding her when Damien made her cry. And now she dared to guilt me for saying no. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping the floor. You'll regret this, she hissed and stormed out. Damien followed, shooting me one last look of contempt. The door slammed behind them, and I collapsed onto the couch, shaking. That night sleep was impossible. My phone lit up with messages from Sophia, each one sharper than the last. I can't believe you. Family helps family. You're selfish. Don't expect us to be there when you need us. I turned my phone off, tears stinging my eyes. Was this what my secret was going to cost me? The only family I had, turning against me before they even knew the truth. And then, for the first time, the thought hit me. Maybe I should just tell them. What was I protecting, really? A fragile sense of independence. Was I so afraid of their greed that I'd rather suffer alone? But then, just as quickly, I remembered Damien's sneer, my mother's expectant tone, Sophia's fury. Well, telling them would destroy everything. Still, the walls were closing in. I stared at the lottery ticket, tucked safely in a drawer. My hands itched to tear it apart, to pretend it had never happened. But I couldn't. The money was mine, and somehow I would have to protect it, even if it meant protecting myself from the people I loved most. A week later, things escalated. I came home to find Sophia waiting on my porch again, this time without Damien. Her eyes were red, her face pale. Ellie, please, she whispered. We're drowning. Damien's threatening to leave me if we can't get this mortgage. I don't know what else to do. For a split second, my heart softened. She looked like the sister I used to know, vulnerable, desperate. But I caught myself. This was how it always worked. The pleas, the tears, the manipulation. I shook my head. I can't. Her expression hardened instantly, the mask snapping back into place. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. You're hiding something, she accused. My stomach flipped. What? You've been acting strange. Avoiding us. Secretive. I know you, Ellie. You're keeping something from me. Her eyes bored into mine, sharp and suspicious. For a terrifying moment, I thought she could see straight through me, straight to the ticket locked away in my drawer. But I forced a laugh. I'm just tired, that's all. She didn't believe me, could tell. But she said nothing more, just turned on her heel and walked away. As I watched her disappear down the street, a chilling realization sank in. The secret wasn't just heavy anymore. It was dangerous. The silence between Sophia and me stretched for days. No calls, no texts. For a while, I thought maybe she had given up. Maybe she and Damien had found another way out of their financial mess. But deep down I knew better. The first sign came on a Thursday night. I returned home late from work, exhausted, and noticed something strange. My front gate, which I always locked, was slightly ajar. My stomach tightened. I lived in a safe neighborhood, but I wasn't careless. I pushed the gate open slowly, every nerve in my body on edge. The porch light flickered as I unlocked the door. Inside, everything looked normal, until I noticed the drawer in my bedroom, the one where I kept the ticket. It was open, froze. My heart slammed against my ribs as I rushed over. The ticket was still there, tucked inside its envelope. Relief washed over me, but it was laced with fear. Someone had been here, someone had looked. And I already knew who. I slammed the drawer shut and backed away, my breaths coming fast and shallow. Sophia had to be. She was the only one who'd been suspicious. The only one who knew me well enough to sense when I was hiding something. I picked up my phone with trembling hands and dialed her. She answered on the second ring. Ellie. Her voice was smooth, too smooth. Were you in my house? I demanded. Silence. Then a soft laugh. What are you talking about? Don't play games with me, Sophia. Someone was in my room. Someone touched my things. Her voice turned icy. Maybe you should check your locks, Ellie. Not everyone is as trustworthy as you think. And then she hung up. I stood there, staring at the phone, my blood running cold. The next few days were hell. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every sound outside made me flinch. At work, I caught myself staring blankly at my computer screen, unable to focus. My boss asked if I was okay, and I mumbled something about stress. Stress. The word felt laughably small compared to what was happening. I was carrying a secret worth $47 million. And now, the people closest to me were circling like sharks, sensing blood in the water. Then came Damien. He showed up at my house one evening while I was cooking dinner. His knock was heavy, deliberate, like he owned the place. I opened the door reluctantly. Evening, he said, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. Mind if I come in? I wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed at me to slam the door in his face. But fear made me step aside. He wandered through my living room, hands in his pockets, whistling softly. Nice place. Cozy. You must be doing pretty well for yourself. My stomach churned. He was baiting me, fishing for cracks in my composure. What do you want, Damien? I asked, crossing my arms. He stopped and turned, his smirk cutting like a knife. Sophia thinks you're hiding something. And I agree. You've always been the secretive type, but lately, it's worse. What is it, Ellie? Man. Money. Drugs. I stiffened. That's none of your business. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. See, that's where you're wrong. Because when my wife lies awake at night crying about the mortgage, about how her sister abandoned her, it is my business. I backed away, my hands shaking. I told you, I can't help. His smirk widened. Won't help, you mean? But that's okay. We'll find out what you're hiding, one way or another. And with that, he turned and left, whistling again as if nothing had happened. The door clicked shut, and I collapsed against it, my chest heaving. That night I barely slept, my dreams twisted with images of Sophia rifling through my drawers, Damien's smirk, my mother's pleading voice. By morning I knew one thing. I wasn't safe, not in my own home. I called the lottery office and asked about early payout options. The woman on the line explained the process, the waiting period, the legal steps. Every answer felt like another chain binding me to this nightmare. The money was there. It was mine, but it was untouchable for now. And until I had it securely in my account, I was exposed. The breaking point came a week later. I returned home from the grocery store to find my back window shattered. Glass littered the floor. Panic surged through me as I dropped the bags and rushed to the bedroom. The drawer. Envelope. My vision blurred as I tore through the room, searching, praying. But it was useless. The ticket, my $47 million lifeline, had been stolen. I sank to the floor, sobbing, my body shaking with rage and despair. And then, through my tears, I noticed something. A photo frame on the dresser, knocked over in the chaos. The glass cracked. Behind it, tucked half under the frame, was the envelope. I snatched it up, clutching it to my chest. It was still there, still safe. Relief flooded me, but it was short-lived, because whoever had broken in hadn't found it. But they would try again, and next time I might not be so lucky. That night, I sat in the dark, the ticket clutched in my hands, and realized the truth. It wasn't just about greed anymore. It was about survival. Sophia and Damien wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. And my family, the people I'd once trusted with my life, had become my greatest threat. For the first time, a terrifying thought took root in my mind. Maybe I'd have to disappear, leave everything behind, before they destroyed me. The next morning, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, staring at the hollow reflection looking back at me. My skin was pale, dark circles shadowed my eyes. And for the first time, I barely recognized myself. I was falling apart. The ticket, tucked safely back into its hiding place, felt less like a blessing and more like a curse. Every creak in the house made me flinch. Every passing car outside made me wonder if Sophia or Damien were circling, waiting. By 10 a.m., I'd already decided I couldn't keep living like this. I pulled out my laptop and began searching for options. New cities, cheap rentals, even flights out of the country. My heart raced as I scrolled through page after page, imagining a new life far away where no one knew me. But the logistics were overwhelming. The lottery payout hadn't cleared yet, and until it did, I was broke. No secret fortune, no golden parachute, just a fragile piece of paper worth millions that might as well have been a ticking bomb. And I knew if I left now, without the money, Sophia and Damien would only chase me harder. I closed the laptop with shaking hands, pressing my forehead against the cool wooden desk. I felt trapped in a nightmare that had no exit. That evening the phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but when I saw my mother's name on the screen, guilt forced my hand. "Ellie," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to talk. Please. Your sister, she's not herself." Closed my eyes. "Mom, I can't. Not right now. Please," she begged. "She's convinced you're hiding something from her. She cries all night. Damien's angrier than I've ever seen him. They're falling apart, Ellie. If you don't help them," her voice broke. "I don't know what they'll do." Her words landed like stones in my stomach. I wanted to scream, to tell her that Sophia had broken into my house, that Damien had threatened me. But the thought of my mother's disappointment held my tongue. Instead, I whispered, "I'll think about it." It was a lie, and we both knew it. The real breaking point came 2 nights later. I had just finished brushing my teeth when a sound froze me mid-step. Soft scrape from the back door. My pulse thundered as I crept through the dark house, clutching a heavy flashlight like a weapon. The scrape came again, then a click. Someone was trying to pick the lock. I flicked on the porch light, my hands shaking. Through the glass I saw him. Damien. His eyes met mine, cold and sharp. For a long second, neither of us moved. Then he smirked and stepped back into the shadows. I locked every bolt, shoved a chair under the handle, and collapsed against the wall, gasping for air. There was no denying it now. They weren't just suspicious. They were hunting me. The next morning I made my move. I went to the bank and rented a safety deposit box. My hands shook as I placed the ticket inside, sealing it behind steel and security cameras. For the first time in weeks I exhaled. At least now, if they broke into my house again, they wouldn't find anything. But the relief was short-lived, because when I walked out of the bank, Sophia was waiting. She leaned against her car, arms crossed, eyes burning with a mix of fury and betrayal. "Where were you?" she demanded. Froze. "What are you doing here? Answer me." Her voice cracked like a whip. "You've been avoiding me, sneaking around, lying to me. Do you think I'm stupid, Ellie? I know you're hiding something." Her face twisted, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Tell me the truth, or I swear, Damien will drag it out of you himself." My breath caught. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. This wasn't about family, or love, or loyalty. This was war. I turned without a word, got into my car, and drove off, my hands trembling on the wheel. Tears blurred my vision, but underneath the fear, something else burned in me. Anger. They wanted to break me, to strip away everything I had. But I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. If I had to vanish to keep what was mine, then so be it. For the first time, I wasn't just running from them. I was planning, and when the time came, Sophia and Damien would regret ever crossing me. The night I chose to disappear, the world outside felt unnaturally quiet. The cicadas hummed faintly, the street lamps flickered like dying candles, and every shadow seemed alive with menace. I had spent days preparing in secret, packing only essentials, selling small valuables online for cash, and creating a false trail of credit card charges that would lead Sophia and Damien 3 states away. My plan was airtight, or at least I hoped it was. The lottery payout was only days from clearing, but I couldn't wait. Damien's smirk at my back door still haunted me every time I closed my eyes, and Sophia's venomous promise that Damien would drag the truth out of me echoed in my skull like a curse. So I made my move. At 2 a.m. I left my house for the last time. My suitcase was small, my steps careful. I'd parked a rental car 2 blocks away to avoid suspicion. I wore a baseball cap pulled low, a plain hoodie, and gloves to leave no trace. The air was cold enough to sting my lungs. My heart raced with each step as if the night itself were holding its breath, waiting to see if I would make it. I had almost reached the corner when a familiar voice sliced through the silence. Ellie froze. From the shadows stepped Mark, my oldest friend, the one person I still thought I could trust. We'd known each other since college. He'd helped me move apartments, patched me up after breakups, and was the one I'd once told, "If I ever disappear, you'll be the only one who knows where I went." But tonight, his expression wasn't warm. It was conflicted. "What are you doing out here?" he asked softly, but his eyes darted to the suitcase in my hand. My throat tightened. I just need to get away for a while." He stepped closer. Too close. Sophia was right, wasn't she? His voice cracked. "You're hiding something. You've been lying to everyone. To me." My stomach dropped. "You've been talking to her." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. In that moment I saw it all. Sophia's paranoia, Damien's threats. They hadn't been working alone. They had been whispering poison into Mark's ear, turning him against me piece by piece. I stumbled back a step, clutching my suitcase. "You don't understand." "No," he cut me off sharply. His eyes were wet, desperate. "I do understand. You came into money, didn't you? And you didn't trust me enough to tell me. After everything, Ellie." His voice broke. "I could have protected you. I could have helped. Instead, you're running away like some criminal." My heart pounded so hard I thought it might split my chest. "This isn't about trust. It's about survival. They'll destroy me if they know." Mark's jaw tightened. "Then give me the ticket." The words hung in the cold night air like a death sentence. For a moment I couldn't breathe. My best friend, the one person I thought was on my side, was just like the rest of them. "Mark," my voice trembled. "Don't do this." But his eyes had hardened. He reached out not for me but for the suitcase. I stepped back, shaking my head. "It's not here, and even if it was, you'll never touch it." The tension between us was suffocating. 2 decades of friendship balanced on a razor's edge. I could almost hear it snapping. Finally, Mark's arm dropped, but his expression was unreadable. "They're going to find you, Ellie, no matter where you go. Sophia won't stop. Damien won't stop. And when they do, don't expect me to save you." Without another word, he turned and vanished into the shadows, leaving me standing there, shaking, the suitcase heavy in my hand. I forced myself to keep moving, tears blurring my vision as I reached the rental car. My body felt numb, but my mind was burning with one brutal truth. I had no one left. Not Sophia. Not Damien. Not even Mark. I was utterly alone. As the engine rumbled to life and the road stretched out before me, I made a silent vow. If they wanted to hunt me, let them. But the next time they saw me, I wouldn't be the helpless sister or the fragile friend. I would be untouchable, because money wasn't just power, it was freedom, and once that $47 million hit my account, I would make sure Sophia, Damien, and yes, even Mark, learned exactly what it felt like to be on the losing side of betrayal. The bus rolled into a city that didn't know my name. No one here cared about my past, my family, or the lies I carried like chains. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange relief, as if anonymity itself was a warm blanket wrapping around me. I stepped off with nothing but my suitcase and a prepaid phone. The neon signs buzzed overhead, the streets were slick from a recent rain, and strangers hurried past me with their umbrellas and tired eyes. To them, I was just another shadow blending into the night. Exactly what I wanted. I rented a small studio apartment under a false name, cash only. The walls were thin, the heater rattled, and the mattress dipped in the middle, but it was mine, my sanctuary. Every night, I'd sit by the window, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. The thought of Sophia's twisted smile and Damien's threats still haunted me, but now those memories felt less like wounds and more like fuel. Because out here, away from their poisonous reach, I had time to think, time to plan. The lottery payout cleared quietly, wired into an offshore account I had set up months ago. $47 million. My chest tightened the first time I saw the numbers glowing on the screen. It wasn't just money. It was a weapon, shield, a way to rewrite the rules of my life. Still, loneliness clung to me like a second skin. I avoided making friends. I changed coffee shops weekly, grocery stores bi-weekly, routes daily. Paranoia became habit. Sometimes, I'd catch a reflection in a shop window and swear I saw Damien's silhouette across the street. Once, a woman with Sophia's hair color brushed past me and I nearly collapsed from panic. But no matter how far I ran, one truth remained. Hiding was temporary. If I truly wanted freedom, I couldn't just disappear. I had to end their power over me. That's when the idea began to grow. Revenge. It started small, scribbles in a notebook, a list of names, a map of possible moves. Sophia, Damien, even Mark. One by one, I sketched scenarios where their greed would devour them from the inside out. I wasn't thinking about violence. Not yet. My weapon was money, influence, connections. I could hire people without ever meeting them, fund operations under shell companies. I could pull strings so quietly, they wouldn't know I was the one holding the rope until it tightened around their necks. The thought thrilled me, terrified me, and yet, it felt inevitable. Because they had already taken everything else from me. Why shouldn't I take what mattered most to them? But then, something happened that reminded me the danger wasn't gone. One evening, after weeks of careful routine, I returned to my apartment and froze. The lock on my door looked different. Subtle scratch marks around the keyhole. My chest constricted as I reached for the handle. Inside, nothing seemed disturbed. The suitcase was still under the bed. My laptop still on the table. But when I checked the drawer where I kept my prepaid phone's spare SIM cards, one was missing. A chill rippled through me. Someone had been here. Someone knew where I was. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor, knees tucked to my chest, staring at the door as if it might burst open any second. My mind replayed Mark's warning. They're going to find you, Ellie. No matter where you go. He'd been right. But what they didn't realize was that fear no longer paralyzed me, sharpened me. The next morning, I burned the notebook full of revenge sketches. Not because I was giving up, no. 'Cause I needed something more concrete. Something real. I would no longer just dream about revenge. I would build it, step by step, dollar by dollar, until Sophia, Damien, and Mark learned that the sister they had underestimated was gone. In her place stood someone far more dangerous. The morning I decided to strike back, the city felt different. The sky was low and gray, and the air smelled of rain. I pulled the blinds shut in my apartment, locked the door, and powered on my laptop. This wasn't about running anymore. This was about war. I started with Sophia. Her pride was always her greatest weakness. She loved to show off the life she couldn't actually afford. The designer clothes, the luxury dinners, the perfect marriage to Damien. What most people didn't know was that their finances were built on quicksand. Credit cards maxed out. Loans stacked on top of loans. Even their mortgage was teetering. All it would take was the right push. And I had millions to give that push. Using one of my offshore accounts, I created a shell corporation, faceless, untraceable. Through it, I posed as a silent investor offering Sophia and Damien an opportunity too good to resist, funding for their new real estate project. I knew them well enough to predict every move. Greed would blind them. Suspicion wouldn't even cross their minds. And I was right. Within a week, Damien responded to the fake proposal with his usual arrogance. We're always open to working with serious investors. Let's talk numbers. I almost laughed out loud. If only he knew who was on the other side of the screen. But this wasn't just about money. I wanted them to feel what I had felt: confusion, fear, desperation. So I crafted the deal with precision. Every clause, every figure, designed to slowly strangle them. On paper, it looked like an opportunity of a lifetime. In reality, it was a noose tightening around their necks. The best part: I wouldn't even need to touch them. Their own greed would do the job for me. Still, revenge didn't come without risk. Late at night, I'd lie awake, the glow of the city outside my window, and wonder, what if they found out? What if Damien traced the money back to me? But then I remembered the scratches on my apartment lock. Someone had already found me once. I couldn't afford hesitation. Type faster, planned harder. Every keystroke was both a shield and a blade. 2 weeks later, the first stage of my plan began to unfold. Through the shell company, I released an initial investment, just enough to hook them deeper. Damien called it a golden ticket. Sophia posted a photo on Instagram of champagne glasses clinking over dinner, captioned, "New beginnings. Big things coming." I almost choked on my coffee when I saw it. They thought they were celebrating their rise. In truth, they were already falling. But even as I reveled in the satisfaction, a shadow of doubt crept in. Because somewhere deep down, I knew they weren't the only ones playing a game. That missing SIM card from my drawer, the scratch on my lock, someone out there was watching me. And if I wasn't careful, my carefully spun web could snap around me instead. Rain hammered against my window as I sat in the glow of my laptop. The numbers on the screen told me everything I needed to know. Sophia and Damien had taken the bait, deeper than I even imagined. Their so-called real estate project had ballooned into something ridiculous. They were pulling money left and right, leasing flashy cars, securing extravagant venues for fake investor meetings, even hiring staff they couldn't afford. All of it funded by the cash I fed them through my shell company. I couldn't stop smiling. Every dollar they touched was another knot in the rope I was wrapping around their necks. 3 weeks in, their greed turned into desperation. Damien emailed me late at night. "We'll need an additional $2 million to close the deal. Our investors are getting restless. This is urgent." Investors. The word made me laugh bitterly. There were no investors. Just ghosts Damien conjured up to justify the hunger gnawing at him. I sent the transfer anyway, then quietly altered the contract to bind them tighter. Hidden penalties. Deadlines they could never meet. Interest rates that would suffocate them the moment I decided to pull the plug. This wasn't just business. This was justice. But justice has a way of bleeding into obsession. At night, I'd catch myself whispering their names as I typed. I'd picture Damien's smug grin crumbling into panic, Sophia's perfectly staged smile slipping when she realized the empire she flaunted online was nothing but sand. It wasn't enough to ruin them. I wanted them to feel hunted, so I started leaving breadcrumbs. Cryptic email here, a miscalculated figure there, just enough to plant a seed of doubt. One night, I created a new email address and sent Damien a single line. "How much loyalty do you think Sophia has when the money runs out?" No sender name, no signature, nothing traceable. I pictured him reading it in his study, glass of whiskey trembling in his hand. I imagined the way he'd look at Sophia afterward, suspicion creeping into his eyes. That was the beauty of revenge. Didn't just break bank accounts. Broke bonds. But then, something happened I didn't expect. It was a Thursday evening. I was reviewing the latest wire transfers when my phone buzzed. A blocked number. For a second I almost ignored it. But curiosity won. "Hello." Silence. Then, a voice I hadn't heard in months. "Ellie, stop what you're doing." My blood ran cold. It was Mark, my oldest friend, the one person I thought I could still trust. "How did you get this number?" I whispered. He sighed heavily. "Doesn't matter. What matters is, you're playing with fire. Sophia and Damien, they're not stupid. Someone's already asking questions. If they trace this back to you, they won't." I cut in sharply. "I covered everything. The accounts. Paper trails. It's airtight." "Ellie," his voice cracked. "I don't think you understand. They've hired someone, Fixer, and from what I've heard, he's already close." My chest tightened. Fixer. Course they would. Damien was too arrogant to accept failure, too scared to lose face. If he suspected betrayal, he wouldn't wait for answers. He'd buy them. That night I barely slept. Every creak in the building sounded like footsteps coming for me. Every shadow across my wall looked like a figure waiting with a knife. But fear had always been my cage. And I wasn't going back in. If Sophia and Damien wanted to send someone after me, let them. I still had $47 million. I still had control of the game. And I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The city had a way of swallowing secrets whole. Neon lights blinked in puddles. Sirens howled in the distance, and yet no one noticed the stranger in the crowd. He never gave his real name. People who dealt with him only whispered one, Roar. Tall, broad-shouldered, eyes as flat as glass. He spoke little, listened always, and when he moved, it was with the precision of a predator. Damien's money had bought him, but loyalty wasn't in the contract. Efficiency was. And right now, efficiency meant finding me. I didn't know it yet, of course. At that moment, I was too busy savoring my latest move. Sophia and Damien's project had collapsed in on itself. They'd borrowed against borrowed money, built illusions on top of lies, and now creditors were circling like vultures. I watched it unfold through the numbers on my screen. Late payments, bounce checks, counts frozen. Every ping of a failed transaction was music to my ears. But beneath the melody of their downfall, something else hummed. A quiet unease I couldn't quite name. The feeling of being watched. At first I told myself it was paranoia. Too many sleepless nights, too many cups of coffee, too much adrenaline. But then I noticed the patterns. A black sedan parked across the street 3 nights in a row. A man at the cafe who never ordered, just sat with a newspaper. Footsteps behind me that stopped when I stopped. Coincidences, I told myself. Coincidences. But my gut whispered otherwise. Meanwhile, Damien's paranoia had turned him into a storm. He snapped at Sophia in public, accused her of mishandling funds, demanded to see proof of every expense. Their perfect social media empire started to show cracks, smiles that didn't reach their eyes, captions that read more like pleas than celebrations. I should have felt satisfied. This was what I wanted. But every victory tasted ash dry with the shadow at my back. One night just after midnight I heard it. A soft scrape against my apartment door. Froze. My laptop's glow flickered across the room as I sat perfectly still, breath shallow. The scrape came again. Metal against metal, deliberate, careful. Someone was picking the lock. Heart pounding, I reached for the drawer where I kept the emergency pepper spray. My hands shook. The memory of every betrayal sharpening into one clear thought. Not like this. Not without a fight. Then a silence. Whoever it was had stopped. I crept to the peephole, but the hallway was empty. The next morning, a plain white envelope slid under my door. No address. No signature. Just a single photograph inside. It was me, taken from across the street. Window blinds half closed. I dropped the photo. My chest tightening as if invisible hands were squeezing the air out of me. The game I thought I controlled was no longer mine alone. Someone else was moving pieces now. And for the first time since the lottery win, I wasn't sure I was winning anymore. The walls of Sophia and Damien's empire were crumbling faster than even I predicted. Their glamorous social media posts had turned into desperate motivational quotes. The people who once begged for invitations to their parties now whispered behind their backs, watching the slow-motion collapse like a public execution. I had tightened the noose perfectly. Creditors were demanding payment. Investors were pulling out. Their dream house was suddenly up for auction, and through it all, I stayed invisible, just a shadow with a keyboard and a $47 million war chest. This was supposed to feel sweet, but something was sour in the air. Started with the calls. Blocked numbers. Always silent. Always hanging up after 2 rings. Then the envelope, another one, this time no photo, just a piece of paper with 5 words. I see you, Ellie. My blood turned to ice. No one called me Ellie anymore, not even my closest colleagues. How did they know? I tried to push it aside, drown myself in the chaos I was creating for my siblings, but the unease followed me like a second shadow. And then came the night I finally saw him. I was leaving a late-night diner, hood pulled low, my laptop bag slung across my shoulder. The streets were wet from rain, neon reflections glowing like broken glass. That's when I felt it, eyes on me. Turned. A man stood half in the light, half in darkness. Hands tucked in the pockets of a black coat. His face was unremarkable, the kind you'd forget in an instant, but his eyes, flat, unreadable like the surface of a frozen lake. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just watched me. I forced myself to walk away, heart hammering, every nerve screaming to run. When I finally dared to glance back, he was gone, vanished. But my instincts told me the truth. He hadn't left. He was simply closer than I realized. Back in my apartment, adrenaline still racing, I found another envelope waiting under the door. This one had no words. Just a single playing card, the Queen of Spades. I stared at it, my pulse pounding. A silent message, but clear as a gunshot. I've chosen you as my game piece. Meanwhile, Damien was spiraling. He'd begun drinking too much, sending paranoid emails to phantom investors. Sophia's mask was cracking, her perfect hair and makeup now a fragile disguise for sleepless nights and red-rimmed eyes. I should have been celebrating. They were finally paying the price. But all I could think about was that man. That shadow, that card. For the first time since this all began, I realized something terrifying. Maybe I wasn't the hunter anymore. Maybe I was the prey. The storm finally broke. Damien and Sophia's empire didn't just stumble, it shattered. Their luxury home was seized by the bank. Reporters crowded the driveway, filming Sophia's tear-stained face as movers carried out designer furniture like stolen treasure. Damien screamed at them, but his voice cracked, pathetic, drowned by the sound of cameras clicking. On social media, hashtags turned cruel. Hashtag fraud siblings. Hashtag luxury lies. Hashtag fall of the kings. Their investors wanted blood. Their so-called friends vanished. Overnight, the siblings who once looked untouchable had become a circus act, laughed at by the same people who once begged to be in their orbit. And I watched it all. Every headline, every viral post, every broken scream from Damien's throat. It was my masterpiece. But even as I savored their ruin, that shadow followed me. The man in the coat. The silent calls. The Queen of Spades sitting on my desk like a curse. My revenge was complete. But my war was far from over. It happened on a night like any other. Or so I thought. I was walking home, the city quiet, when I felt the air shift. Presence. He stepped out of the alley, roar. Close, he was even more terrifying. Controlled. His voice, when he finally spoke, was almost gentle. You've done well, Ellie. Better than they paid me to expect. My stomach dropped. Paid. He pulled a cigarette, lit it, the flame briefly carving shadows across his face. Your brother and sister hired me. Fixer. My job was simple. Make sure you didn't interfere. But then, he smirked. You turned out to be more dangerous than them. I clenched my fists. So what now? You kill me. Rourke exhaled smoke, eyes never leaving mine. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't be standing here. Silence. Heavy. The city seemed to hold its breath. Your siblings are finished, he continued. They can't pay me anymore. And unlike them, you don't waste potential. You build empires, or burn them down. He flicked the cigarette to the ground, crushed it beneath his boot. So here's my offer. You stop looking over your shoulder, and I start working for you. My pulse hammered. This was it, the final move. I thought of Damien, broken and drunk in a motel room. I thought of Sophia, hiding her face from cameras, mascara running like ink. I thought of the silence of my empty apartment, the fear that had grown like rot in my chest, and I smiled. Fine, I whispered. But understand something, Rourke. You don't work for me, you work with me, on my terms. His grin was thin, sharp. Deal. He handed me a fresh card, another Queen of Spades, but this time, written across the front in black ink. The beginning. Epilogue. Months later, headlines screamed of new scandals. Corrupt CEOs, fallen politicians. Each story had the same invisible signature. Financial traps, reputations burned, empires collapsing overnight. No one knew who was pulling the strings. But in the shadows, two figures moved in perfect rhythm. A woman with cold determination, and a man with eyes like ice. The world thought my story ended with $47 million. But that was just the down payment.